Hi everybody, it's Rise and Smile Dewey Duck and Jamar S. Russell, the Con and the Duck, and welcome to our show. It's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome, Jamar. How are you today? What's going on? How's your week been?
Man, everything's blessed. Every day out here is blessed, man. I'm gonna take the phrase of some of the guys that had came home. They say there's no more bad days, so that's what it
I
is.
I sort of feel the same way. I people say, do I ever have bad days? And I say, when you were looking down the shotgun, the barrel of a shotgun, a permanent hospitalization for 30 years, then every day is a good day. So God bless our freedom and just we're going to do the integration section today of the Live Love. Last week we did the Learn section, and we basically just jumped into your story about, your incarceration, and a little bit about my story about my psychiatric history and everything. But basically, so today we're going sort of backtrack a little bit and get an idea of your childhood, what influenced you, and of course, the circumstances of your arrests and and conviction and everything. But I just thought that we could do that, and because we sort of jumped in the middle last week, and I think it's important to have some background.
Absolutely. So
And
wherever you want to start, just
before
shoot
we
it off.
start, is there a poem you haven't you'd like to start with?
Let me check it out. Since you were talking about background, I might need to refer to one of my other books. Let me see if it's in here. I don't think so. Oh yes, it is. So,
Oh,
when we talk about background, right? Born in Washington D.C. Um, and my mother's only child, my father's second, right? And this is a poem that talks about the house where I grew. Um, I remember 4414 before we moved back when I was 14. Kanisha was born and I was 4. I held a newborn baby and there would be one more. I grow with these 3 sisters, but I was the only one there, the only boy, my mother's only child, the only male, where no others were around. That house, so much love. I remember Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners. Family would come from New Jersey, Maryland, North Carolina, and Virginia. A house filled with love, music, and joy. It was amazing. Aunt Marcia stayed in the basement. We used to have parties there. There was a bar with stools, booths, lights, and a lot of mirrors. Our room upstairs was painted green. I recall 2 deflated balloons from my baby shower that my mother kept hanging from a string. She'd repeatedly play Anita Baker's Rapture record and sing. Aunt Kathy, Chantel, Kanisha, and Christine had the middle room, and Grandma had one of her own, but it seemed everyone slept in her bed. I can't remember her sleeping alone. The church was 2 doors down, and Grandma helped with the food bank. Our cabinets stayed full. Some Sundays they'll serve dinner with all the food stuffed piled on plates. I remember Aunt Marcia teaching me to ride a bike after I used to scoot around on my big wheel. I lost that bike and learnt people will still. I used to love to go to the corner store using Grandma's funny colored paper money. I'd get the regular kind in return, and the lady that worked there loved me. Me, Chantel, Kanisha, and Christine would play hide and seek around the house from the basement to the attic. Sometimes we'd torment Kanisha by hiding her favorite pillow until I get yelled at to let her have it. The house had Mr. Green's barber shop in the front, a garage filled in the back with junk. Uncle David cleaned that out to start his landscaping business that he still runs. My grandfather, who I never met, was the reason we had all of this. It's that feeling that I had back when we were all on Georgia Avenue that I'll always miss. The folks around the block that we knew. My walks back and forth to school. All of those were the best before my mom and I would move. Sometime I dream I'd be back in that house, even though it's been sold. The conditions changed as I got old. Even after all the other places I lived or moved to, 4414 Georgia Avenue is the part of me that lives, my first home, my first memories. My heart calls back to 202-829-3323, to the house where I grew, a place I knew was home, my beginning.
Beautiful. That's great. So you lived here when you were 14 until what age?
Well, no, I lived there until I was about 6, and I still went to school. And then I moved back when I was 14 because we had
Oh,
got
okay.
evicted from the apartment where we was living at.
Oh, okay. Wow. That was like quite a cornucopia of knowledge about your childhood, Jamar.
Yeah,
So okay, so this was 414 was where?
that was
In
the address, 4414 Georgia
no, but
Avenue,
it was in Washington or where
Washington,
was it?
D.C., yeah, Northwest Washington, D.C.
Oh, okay. And you was it an apartment building, a project, or what?
No, it was a house.
Oh, a house.
It was a
Oh,
house.
okay.
Mixed zone. We had the storefront. There was the barber shop, and then the house.
Oh, okay. And you had three sisters, is that
No, they were
correct?
cousins. I'm my
Oh,
mother's
cousins.
only child. Yeah.
That's what you said, but you
Yeah.
also said that your father had two, so
No, my
I just
father
want to be
has one other. I'm the second one. My oldest is a boy. I mean, my brother Willie, but they lived up Jersey.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you lived with you, your mom, and your three cousins in this house.
My aunt, my grandmother, and my other aunt.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
So,
wow.
and
And
sometimes it might have been another cousin or somebody else or whoever. Yeah. So.
so you grew up full of family.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
That's great. Yeah, I well, I had my sister and my three fathers and my mother. So, but I sometimes I sort of made. Sometimes I sort of wish I'd never moved away from Texas, but it's sort of like. But I sort of get that sense of nostalgia with you and 414. Sort of like this this ideal childhood that like no longer can be reclaimed.
Yeah. So where were you in Texas?
I was born in Midland, and on my first birthday, my mother finalized her divorce from my blood father. She remarried, so I grew up with a second father who his name Jody Joseph. My mother was Mary, and I lived in Abilene, Texas, for 7 years with Jody as my father, and then one day my mother comes back from New York with this strange man. Did I tell you this story?
Nah, I never heard this.
Oh, okay, so one day, so my mother's like supposedly happily married to her second husband, who's the daddy to me and my sister. He's basically the only father that we've ever known, and so she comes back from New York bringing this high class lawyer named Lawrence Walsh, and so and she's still married to Jody. So, and she said that Judge Walsh was going to help her with her finances with the bank because in 1964, if you were like a financial woman and you were dealing with the bank, they treated you like a little kid. And she was very well educated financially and everything, so they weren't treating her right about her father's estate. So she brought this lawyer from New York that she met on a flight to Washington to Abilene. And so, I was 9 years old and I loved everything my mother did. So, of course, I wanted to impress her new friends. So I ate 5 drumsticks of fried chicken just to impress them about what a big eater I was. So, long story short, uh, a year late, well, even 10 months later, I was, Jody was gone, Jody was divorced. I was in New York City with my mother and a new husband, Judge Walsh. And so he adopted me. So I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but I've had 3 birth certificates. I was born Roger Dale Allen, and then I became Joseph Dale Tompkins, and now I'm Dale Edward Walsh. So my full name is Roger Joseph Dale Edward Allen Tompkins Walsh, and people ask me why I'm a schizophrenic, Jamar. Can you figure?
I know that. Yeah.
So, so anyway, so basically, I was born in Midland, lived in Abilene till I was 10, and then I moved to New York City, went to boarding school at age 14, graduated from there, went to Dartmouth College, did a lot of drugs, and ended up in a psychiatric ward.
Because of the drugs?
Uh, partly because partly because of the drugs, but also it was just like my natural enthusiasm, and I say that even my first doctor told me, he said if you'd never done LSD, you probably wouldn't be having the problems you are now, and he said you can smoke pot till it comes out of your ears still, but never do LSD again. So basically, LSD, I think, was really the trigger that sent me over into psychosis.
Wow.
But I still love THC cannabis.
Yeah. I know in this area, as well as some other places, but in this area, that's what happened with a lot of people dealing with PCP. So,
Right. Yeah, well, PCP was a little later, but yeah, PCP, I've heard like some. I mean, I had a friend who did PCP at a concert, and he was like literally crawling on his hands and knees through Madison Square Garden, during the concert.
it definitely affects your motor
Right, right.
functions and everything, and yeah, it's a trip.
But actually, I know we gotta get to your background, but actually, this brings up the poem that I decided I wanted to recite for us today. It's called "Afternoon Medication, 1 hour Late." 2 pills 3 times a day. So does the doctor gravely say, and it will cause great dismay if you go any other way. Surely as a wolf can bay when the lunatic moon goes away, and with medication you will stay far from hospital's black hole sway, where they keep the lobotomy ray. But if you forever take meds, safe you'll be from alien beds and the terrible death throes dread, where you feel transformed into lead. But I believe what Shrink said, so a sane life I've led, and still not yet near dead, even though I interact with Fred, the Fed who busted Panama Red. So that's just a reflection on medication, and but so let's get back to you. So you grew up in Washington. When did you move to Maryland?
Moved to Maryland 7, like I said, but I was still going to school, still going to grandma's house, which where I moved to Maryland is only like 20 minutes away, so it wasn't like it's that far. Um, so was out there LaSalle Park in this area called Chillum in Hyattsville, Maryland, PG County, for like the next 7 years.
Okay.
And it was cool. Had my own room, apartment. You know, pool out in the apartment complex, kids,
Very nice.
friends, the creek, all of this stuff that wasn't in the city. Well, not where I was in the city anyway. So,
Right.
yeah.
So how is school for you?
For the most part, on a roll student, you know, might have got into fights, boys, stuff like
Right.
that. But for the most part, figuring it out. Um, I was, I had an idea that pretty much had some intelligence at a young age. So I just wanted to continue to capitalize on that and just,
Right.
get good grades because, that's what I was told I was supposed to do,
Right.
So did well in school for the most part. Didn't really have any problems until like high school. And what was happening was before high school, even entering high school, when we were at the apartment, start seeing those yellow and pink slips on the door. So late rent. And the thing about it is, of course I felt it too because the thing where my mother was going through various jobs and, you know, whatever the reasons were, some stuff out of her control or whatever, um, it was just one of those things, excuse me. Uh, so it was one of those things where it was like I'm observing this stuff and I know she works sometimes multiple jobs and stuff, but it's still struggle and it's me and her. So I would, just observing it, excuse me, observing this,
Right.
and it was a shift because you can tell, the feeling, even though when things aren't that great, but things were fine for the most part until we had to move. And we didn't get our stuff placed out, which I feared that because I've seen people, matter of fact, a neighbor of mine's there, like all of this stuff. Because when you come home from school, like say if you were in elementary,
Right.
which I wasn't at that time, but I remember as a kid, like you can go past this actual part of the front of the complex and see people's stuff out there. Like I never wanted that. So later on, when it was us, we were actually able to pack our stuff up and stuff like that. We didn't get that part, but it still was a part where I recognized it. I actually went into a depression. So I started, smoking weed and drinking with the seniors, you know, my freshman year, which
Right.
by this time I'm back at grandma. I mean, after we move, I'm back at grandma's house. So it wasn't really with the seniors no more because that was when I was actually still in LaSalle Park. But once I
Right.
got back uptown, it was. I remember there would be these depressing walks early in the morning to the subway station because I'm seeing all types of stuff early in the morning that's not necessarily the best. And sometimes I didn't even get off the train, and that was like my worst year academically, other than my only year, my year in A&T down in college. But that was
Right.
my worst year, my freshman year, just because of that. So,
So,
um,
so you say it was your worst year, so it improved over time?
so what ended up happening was that summer my uncle came and got me to stay with him down in Dale City, Virginia. So,
Oh, okay.
they called the DC the DMV, and I'm actually somebody that has lived in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So I was there, um, and that was great. You talking about stability, two-parent household because my uncle, his wife, they took care of the house. I'm down there with my cousin, doing well in school again, playing sports. We're playing for his recreation team, doing well in that, and it was just a nice neighborhood. The environment, everything was good. The school, so it was just something that I really enjoy. A place where I enjoy being. I got a job, for the weekend, just an overall better environment.
So, so how long did that last?
For the year. Even though it was a good environment, I'll tell you this too, though. Because of what I experienced prior to that, I already had it set on my mind that I was going to start selling drugs. So, and the reason for that was I felt as though, well, if my mother can't take care of this, well, let me see what I can do to take care of myself. And this is the
Right.
thinking of a 14, 15-year old. So it's not like I got the best judgment. But even though I never, I'm always entrepreneurial because even in
Right.
elementary, I had a beaded jewelry business, middle school of fabric paint. It always wanted my own money, but at that point, it was like, man, I got to do something else because I felt like she dropped the ball, you know. And so it was like, how or what could I do? And that's when I was down there. I actually had started selling marijuana, you know.
Right. And so how big did that get?
So I would go on to do that um, through the rest of high school. Of course, it would my my reference for it was small because I was around that. So what
Right.
initially started out to an ounce, of course, went into a quarter pound, half a pound, pound, and then by the time my senior year, I'm selling weed and crack. So,
Right.
that ended up in that. But I like I said, honor roll student. I also was the president of NESB my senior year, president of the poetry club. So I still took academics serious. So my path was to get off to college, and I got accepted to Howard, North Carolina A&T State University, and Morgan State, which were all HBCUs and engineering schools because that's what I was majoring in.
Right.
Civil engineering is just it didn't work out that way, and I chose A&T because it was the furthest away. Like by that time in Laurel, um, even though Laurel at the time wasn't a place dangerous as some other places in DC or even other spots in PG County, Maryland, I started getting myself into stuff. And by this time, before college, when like guns started to get involved, it was like, let me just get away as far as possible before I don't make it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you went to A and I? What was that?
A&T, North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State
Oh,
University.
okay. And that didn't work out, or
So mind you, remember I told you my freshman year I did poorly.
right.
For my freshman year, I also took algebra to trigonometry.
Right.
So I didn't do well. The class was graded on the curve, which I didn't even understand what that meant, but it meant like I really would have felt it. A lot of times because I was smoking and getting high, I had my head down because I was high in class. Like I ain't, the stuff that and people dealing with these function calculators, which I never got into and understanding everything like that. So I really didn't pass that class, and that was something that I reflected on later because while I'm in Cal One in college, and that's partly because I had all my math credits in high school.
Right.
I had them early, so it was more so just trying to get out of high school because I felt like it was goofy. I would love to learn, but it was just the environment wasn't for me. And I once I analyzed because I thought maybe I could take on all these credits, chemistry, calculus, all this other stuff, and man, I was overwhelmed. I did my math wasn't strong enough, and I just did poorly. Started selling weed again. Getting high, selling weed again. I had a great time down at A&T, but I would have done it differently. I would have, and this is what I generally tell young folks. The first year anything is going to take a transition, so ease into it lightly. Don't take a heavy load, you know.
Right.
and get a feel for the place. And that's what I should have done. My mother advised me, you know, not to, but I wasn't listening to her. Stopped listening to her a long time ago. So it was just like, yeah, I had to learn my own way.
Well, the thing about Dartmouth was they only required 3 courses a semester. You couldn't take, I mean, you could take 4 if you wanted to, but basically, to graduate on time, you just had to take 3 courses. So, and they were intensive courses, obviously, but, I mean, when I went to Fairleigh, I basically went part-time. I was taking like 3 or 4 courses at a time, but, uh, this load of like 5 major courses at the same time is killer. I don't see how people do it.
Yeah. So, I should
So,
have, I should have listened because I had a great time. And I'm gonna tell you something else in which I felt too, which I mean, everything happens for a reason, and I don't regret stuff. Of course, I would have loved to continue my education while I was there. Um, but one of the things that happened was Caterpillar came, right? Caterpillar, the large construction, all of that stuff. Well, they came to speak to a bunch of us in the assembly.
I
And
don't know what caterpillar is.
all right, well, Caterpillar is responsible for construction, like I was saying. Like you can look it up.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, like you can
Like heavy equipment and
heavy
everything.
equipment, all of that stuff. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I
So
thought it was like some sort of organization that was like,
yeah, nah, it's a large company that so they came to
right,
speak to us. Um, and the whole conversation or what they were presenting was towards getting a job with them. Now, mind you, I told you I very much got an entrepreneurial spirit, and I'm like,
right.
what if I don't want to work for you? And so I'm looking at this as like, am I doing all this to get a degree to work for somebody? And it's just like, all right, well, what's the money? And so those were things that I think should have been more talked about in high school, or, just assessing people better.
Right, right.
Because I mean, I understand the importance of a job, but is do I want to work for people for a long time? Is that the end goal?
Right.
Or do I want to do all of these years of school and end up having to pay the school back and go. So
Yeah.
that was something that didn't rub me well.
And also, like, even if they hire me, do I want to work for them for 20 to 40 years and get a pension? Or maybe not even a pension, maybe just a 401k, and I admire your entrepreneurial, spirit, and I've always been sort of that way too myself. When I graduated from Fairleigh, I began my own tutoring business, and I used to tell people I'd help people write papers. I wasn't helping people write papers. I was writing the papers. And so I basically wrote 305-page papers in like 10 semesters. And it was very good money. And,
Yeah.
what I say is I'd cross the bridge and then I would enter campus. And I'd enter campus with like no money in my pocket and walk across campus into the coffee shop, and I'd have $50 in my pocket by the time I reached the coffee shop because, everybody knew me. And hey,
Hmm.
Dewey, I need a favor or a job. Okay, what? 5 pages on the Iliad by Tuesday. Okay, that's $30, so 15 now, 15 when you get the paper.
Hmm.
And so it was a very lucrative business, but I've always been an entrepreneur, and the only corporate experience I have is with this company called World Financial Group, which is the marketing the marketing arm of Transamerica Insurance. and it's $1 billion company and everything. But they're very, but everybody is an independent contractor, so basically everybody is their own entrepreneur. So I
Hmm.
did that for 3 months, for 3 years, but I just admire the entrepreneurial spirit, and even more, I admire the fact that you know, you go into that Caterpillar meeting, and this is what my my co-hosts and I are always talking about on my other podcast is sovereignty and authority, and just saying, am I going to outsource or externalize my power, or am I going to like take it in and use my power within to make my destiny?
Absolutely. And see, especially with seeing my mother, I remember at one point in time, like the contract in which some places she worked went from private to the government, and then she was no longer working, and it was just like that didn't seem fair, or anything else that she was doing. Then it was just like if you were working this, then you got to do a part-time job and all this other stuff. Why isn't this one job providing? And just analyzing and sitting back and seeing that firsthand, it was just like, you know, nah, this ain't it. And the funny thing, this crazy is like right now I've been home for 2 years, right? And blessed enough, to get working. Like it wasn't even 2 months before I was home before I had a job, right? So I was working at Buffalo Wild Wings and the La Quinta Hotel, and both of those part time, right? Which didn't really amount to much, but it was something. And then I got the job which I have now with the health department, with Bridges to Success, which, of course, I'm making more money than I did with both of them. But then even with that, it was like I still had to get another, little job to help out. And so I feel like still in that little struggle that I don't want to be in. That's why the whole thing of making sure I build up my own business and do stuff that I need to do, because there's so many people in this area right now in DC, because there's a DC and the surrounding areas, because there have been a lot of federal employees that's been furloughed, people
Right.
that haven't had jobs for who knows when. And it's just like that's what I'm talking about, have being more independent and self-sufficient versus relying on some government or entity or something like that that can you
Because
know
we're
have something for you today
not
and
only
be gone
relying on
tomorrow.
other people, but basically, what they say, when you work in a job, you're giving all your time to make someone else rich.
Mm-hmm.
Why not make yourself rich instead of somebody else? And that's really what I'm working on, with these podcasts and getting my poetry going, and especially Live Love, because
Mm-hmm.
Live Love is, I think, and this actually gets into faith, which I think, is a big part of your story, Jamar. I mean, we haven't gone into like the details of what, of your conviction and everything. And I don't know if you want to, maybe briefly, but, just what I'm more interested in is how your faith has like got you through the 15 years of prison that you've been subjected to, that you were given.
So a great foundation, like I spoke in the poem, the house where I grew, when I speak about the church being two doors down. Grandma had us in Sunday school. You know, I remember she had bought me this large collection of like children's book with Bible studies, so I was familiar with a lot of the stories young, and I had been in and out of church, throughout my life, but I basically grew up in the church, and having that type of relationship, even with my questions regarding God and faith and how things have been historically in this country. Um, when I was in trouble the first time and I went to jail, over DC jail, I had basically read a large portion of the Bible. Maybe read the New Testament a couple times and read from Genesis always to the book of the prophets somewhere. I think I just kind of like ducked Jeremiah and Lamentations and some of them longer
And
books because
Isaiah.
it was just like, but I did eventually read that within my larger
Right.
incarceration. So, the first time I read the Bible, it rubbed me the wrong way because there's some wild stuff going in Genesis. We like, hold on, this is a holy book.
Right.
What in the world? You know what I'm saying? And I'm like really like trying to grasp this, but then I had to understand this is a history of people, relationship with God and people and everything that went on because the New Testament is very, very much different from the Old Testament, you know.
Definitely.
So it was just like, wow. But later on, I guess you could say with some wisdom, with praying for some discerning, praying for, revelation through things. I got to see things more so for what they were. And also, I wasn't a person that just wanted to omit science from things because I always thought that was stupid. People that wanted to separate church and state, science and religion because there's certain things that you have to recognize um, that are that way because of God, like the systems. Your
Right.
blood circulates and you don't have anything to do with it. You know what I'm saying? Like
Your
breathing,
heart beats.
it does. There's so
Breathe.
many systems. The Earth rotating, you know what I'm saying, around the sun, the solar system, and then also recognizing that the solar system is like a larger version of an atom. These
Right.
various connection as is above, so is below, and then the fact that there's energy that in between it and there's a gravitational pull that people can't explain. You just know, just like the sun, there's a nucleus and it just happens, so it's like that's God. The stuff that we can't explain, we know we can understand and observe the laws, but what created it? So as I was reading and then understanding the power of word, that's why the company is Inspiring Word, you
Right.
know,
Right.
is let me be more mindful of how I use my words. Let me be more mindful because there's certain things that would say in scripture, ask and believe it as is so. In the beginning was the word and the word was God and the word was with God and nothing was created without. So I'm I'm going more so onto the spiritual side of things and trying out these various things that were even in other books that weren't religious books, but they speaking of these same principles as far as
Right.
imagining, feeling, believing, praying, having faith. And that's what I did. I started to write my freedom. I started to write to not only unload certain things and work through my issues therapeutically through journaling, but I also was able to start intentionally writing things the way that I wanted them to be in my life.
And that's well, that's the essence of the poet, the true poet, is precision with language. And I don't know if you know the book, The Four Agreements.
Yeah, by Ruel, hold on, Miguel
Uh,
Ruel.
Miguel Luis.
Yeah,
Miguel Luis, I think it is.
yeah.
But
Make your word impeccable.
one of the agreements is be impeccable with your
Your
word. It
words,
might
yes, sir.
even, and so I think that's one reason why we connect is because we both have the same reverence for the word that that I think is become more and more rare because people just like say whatever comes to their head. And and poetry itself is an exercise in precise vocabulary, precise use of language and everything. So um I just I but one thing I wanted to ask you about, and this is something that I always talk about, that we always talk about in our podcast is how do you feel about? I mean, this is something my own inner journeys led me to really like question or at least like delve into is like to what degree do you see external judgment, say by God or a higher source, greater than inner acceptance, which is the power of the kingdom within?
Break that down. Let me get that question
Okay,
again.
so so basically, most I'm not going to generalize, but most people say, God is almighty, and we're going to die, and ultimately we're going to face judgment by God.
Okay.
Do you agree with that? And
This is, I mean, and this is my own thing. I never died before that I know of. So I
exactly,
can't, I don't like to speak on it. I'm gonna tell you, Revelations to me is a confusing book. So is
right.
part of Daniel. So I pray and I pray for revelation on certain things I've received answers to, certain things I haven't. And I just don't care to speculate on it.
Well, okay, well, what I was talking about is God is judge. I mean, whether you're alive or God or dead,
Yeah.
basically God is set up as the ultimate judge. And what I feel myself is that I'm the ultimate judge. That not only is God within me, and I'm a fractal of God, I'm a part of God, and
Hmm.
therefore, to a certain degree, we are all God. And for 50 years, I basically said I was God. But ultimately, you know, how do you feel about the external judgment of God versus? I don't know if you've ever thought about this,
I
but
no, I think I get what you're saying. What you're saying is you don't separate the two. Like
I don't
I
separate.
don't feel like
I think that the inner core, the inner God, is just as powerful as the judgmental God that a lot of people see.
I don't I don't like the like you said the whole external thing. I don't like
Right,
that even though that's a lot of times how we speak about it. And I really honestly feel like I don't know enough. But
right,
I the way that I see things is that it already is. The judgment already is. Because you know, if you do something wrong, then it's already set in motion. You do something
right,
right, it's already set in motion. You know, if you feel some type of guilt or shame or whatever about something, it's already set in motion, whether you do or you don't.
right.
And that's it already is.
That's the
It doesn't
internal.
have to be I'll wait until like
Right.
no. That's
Well,
it's happening now.
I think we can talk about this much more concretely with you
Yeah,
because you've been through the legal, you have been convicted by the
yeah.
legal system.
And I'm
So
gonna tell you,
let's leave God out of it. But,
okay.
just how do you feel about having been judged by the legal system for something that you admit was wrong, but ultimately, how has that affected your inner perception of yourself? And I mean, I think from what I can see, you've come out of it amazingly well.
Hmm.
And I think I have too. But just I'm just like very interested. What I'm getting at is the judgment of society versus your own judgment of yourself.
So I was guilty of what I was convicted of. Like there was no question about that, right? Um, my personal thing was, as far as the legal system, it does what it's supposed to do. Now, is it always right? No. So I was convicted of first degree murder. With first degree murder, it says that there's some pre contemplation, like it's premeditated, basically,
Right.
right? Now that was always my beef. I'm like, No, it wasn't premeditated because that was not my intention going out that night. That wasn't my intention when I to my apartment
Right,
building. That
right,
was never my intention. Now, what I learned later on with the law, if you're under the influence, then it automatically makes it second degree, right?
right,
Because this affects your ability to think and, some otherwise. And what happened, I actually experienced an explosion, an inner
right,
explosion of anger combined with the substances that was in me. So what happened was my attorney didn't investigate that properly, even with having my story. So that's why I say that it's not always right because if you're facing as something as serious as murder and you don't have the money to pay for the defense, do you think that the person representing you is going to go all out to make sure that you're
right,
proven to be? When they know that you're guilty, you telling them you getting, and it's just like, look, you going to take this cop or what? Which I wasn't willing to do because I was 25 at the age of the crime. I was 28 at the age of sentencing. So 28 at this time of trial too, and they were asking me to take a cop or 27 because I had a mistrial, but whatever. Um, they were asking me to take a cop of from 30 to 50 or 40. I'm like 30 to 50. One, that's not even a set number or 40. Like that's not a better alternative. So it's like no, I hadn't even seen 30 years of life. I don't know what that looks like to be given up. So that was just something that was
right,
crazy to me. And it's just like, no, you know. So with the guidelines and things and everything that was going on, it was just, that was unreal to me. And at 25, I had even rationalized. I said, well, I remember right before the first trial, I think the attorney came in and was like, well, they come with a flat 30. I'm like, no. I said, ask them for 25. And he's like, well, they're not going to do that. And so we're like, well, we going to trial. So, and that's what happened, man. So the system in itself is not always going to be fighting for the rights, even if you think, well, if you're guilty, you shouldn't have no right. No, as a citizen of this country, and we got laws in place, a person should always have rights, and they should always have good representation. But we also in a capitalistic country too, and if you ain't got
right,
the capital, it speak about that in the Bible too, man. Money can be a good defense or a
right,
defense, but so it's one of those things. But even with the system, this is how I feel. I wasn't out there, don't consider myself a violent person, never really did, though I will fight, I will get, depends on what's going on. Um, the stuff that I did in the streets that I didn't get caught for, everything, I was sowing seeds to eventually get to a place to where I would end up be, you know.
right,
So I don't see nothing wrong with anything that happened. Everything happened as the way that it should. Um, I don't feel no type of way about my sentence, my judgment, everything. That was things happened as they needed to for me to become who I, needed to become, for me to learn the lesson that I needed to learn. Be punished the way that I needed to be punished. Everything was as it should have been, and things were set in order from the time that I decided to commit crime.
well, I, I admire your philosophy and your acceptance and everything. I just want, but wait, has this always been the way you felt, or has this developed over time as you've, I mean, when you said you were devastated that when you heard the guilty.
Of course, I was devastated. Like, it's not. Of course, I still had hopes of getting out of stuff, but that's just like, say you're a little kid and you do something wrong.
Right,
Do you
right.
really want to get that whooping, or you want to be like, I hope I don't get caught? It's just-
No, but what I'm asking is, you're so well adjusted now. I mean, you've been through 15 years in prison and everything.
12, nearly 13.
Well, I'm counting your county time
Yeah,
too.
nah, I'm including that too. It's about that's yeah.
Is okay.
Okay.
But anyway, so I'm just like saying, I mean that. Tell us about the process where you can become, I mean, right your way to freedom. I mean, what was the process that really like motivate, besides the desire for freedom? I mean, I know the desire for freedom can be very strong, but you must have had like some sort of like plan or something in mind to like become so well, adjusted to such difficult circumstances.
Well, I mean, it wasn't like I lacked education. Unfortunately, a lot of times, guys that are in the system, some of them don't finish school. Some of them have been in the streets. Some of them have experienced life far worse than what I have. Some of them have been in the juvenile system, and that's why, it's a repetitive cycle for them. For me, being that I've never had a major incarceration, stuff was just like 90 days here, 90 days, you know what I'm saying? Little small stuff that was just like,
Right.
all right. They weren't huge deterrents, and it wasn't like they were back to back. And in the situations where I was kind of getting in trouble a lot, I had changed. I was in the church real heavy for about 2 years until that recession hit, and I had done a whole lot of struggling. I analyzed it. Financial hardships were my triggers, while I was in. But the thing that really got me was I had went from a place of being pretty well off financially for myself for a young man of 25 years old. Um, and I was in there with nothing, with surrounded by people that I damn sure wouldn't want to be around. And then I'm assessing my situation like I'm better than this. So what do I do? Um, I'm like, okay, you didn't finish college. You don't have a trade, even though I started. None of these things that I could just say I was going to go home and I would do this. So I had to develop a plan. Like, even if it was just me coming home, selling bottles of water until I could sell t-shirts, till I could sell something else. Like, I had that plan if things were a certain way, but I was going to develop my writing because I lost all of it. And I said, I don't want to lose a body of work ever again. So as I developed all of it, that's when later on, of course, was going to look into the publishing and have my own stuff. And my idea of putting my poems in the books was even before I got incarcerated. I just
Right.
hadn't got to it, sat down. That phone was going off, that money was calling me, or something else was happening, So I was living and being able to sit down. I had time to put all this stuff together and worked on me. And in that work, it
And
comes
you
with,
kept writing too, right?
say that again.
You kept writing.
Exactly.
Kept
That
on
was
going.
what I said that I could do because I didn't have any other trade. That was going to be my skill. That was going
Right.
to be my way, you know.
So I thought we could close with a poem apiece, and but I just before we do that, I just have one question, which is can you remember a time when you were at the depths and basically your dream resurrected?
Um, Elaborate. What you mean?
Well, so okay, so let's say after 5 years you're in prison, right?
Hmm.
And basically you're determined to ride your way to freedom and to get out and everything. But was there like a point where you like just where your dream of getting out and being a writer and being an author and being in the world, was there like I mean, maybe not. Maybe it's just like a gradual thing. But was like there one point that you can remember where you said, "I can do this. I'm going to do this." I was just wondering because
That
you
was, I think that was pretty much from the start. Like,
right, right,
um, I never had an idea of how I was going to get out, but especially, okay, I'll share this with you. Um, and I think I might have touched on this before, as far as having that cell buddy that had the
right,
that took. So when I was reading through Psalms, and after the cell buddy was like, well, you could get through Psalms in 30 days, just like you could get in Proverbs
right,
through a month, and not just 30, 61, 91, 121. Read those and then just go on with that progression. God spoke to me in a way in which He was just wait, wait on the Lord, trust in God, and fight. These were the words that I got. So that's what I did. I waited, I trusted in God, and I fought. I fought my case. In some instances, I had to fight them guys in prison. You know what I'm saying? But
yeah,
that's what it was. Just that, like, wait, trust, and fight. And that was just thing, just being obedient because I couldn't see myself laying down with it. And so within that, I just wrote, and as things continued on, I had a body of work, and God would provide me with the other stuff. Like as I was going through and seeking stuff, and I was in the state, He provided me with the guy Sean Gardner. Sean Gardner had a self-publishing class. He came from North Branch, from a
right,
whole nother jail. This guy we end up being, that's like a brother to me. He's still in there, but I became a part of the Behind the Wall mentors with him. I still
right,
continue as a Beyond the Wall mentor, and through his self-publishing class, I self-published 8 books in there. It
right,
was all a gradual process, but it still was working in faith. Like that was the thing that I seen in the stories. Like just work in faith. It'll happen. Like, but you have to do this. Like they say, faith without works is dead. Like it's like I had a faith, but I work at it. My mother used to say, "I'm gonna get you out. I'm gonna hit the lottery and I'm gonna get you out." I'd be like, "But you don't even play the lottery." Oh, I'm gonna pray and it's like, nah, it don't work that way. You can't pray and not put the work in. So
right.
that was my whole thing. I'm gonna put this work in and pray. You know.
So, actually, this is my my second book,
Oh man, that's nice.
for the brain.
Okay.
And in it I put 21st century Psalms. So since you were mentioning Psalms,
Mm-hmm.
I figured I'll try reading a psalm. It's called another, and we're waiting for you on deck, Jamar. So
I
pick
got
your
I got one.
okay. So do you want to go first, or you want me to go?
I want you to go ahead.
Okay, another attempt at a psalm. I will raise my voice to the Lord and beseech him to look down on me, and be my sanctuary against solitude and my refuge against reclusiveness, and my ally against alienation, even as I pray to him to guard me with the plenitude of his grace and salvation on my knees, asking him to forgive the sins I cannot help but commit, being a child of original sin. When the first parents blasphemed against the will of God, whose breath gives all creatures life, and I shout my thanks of gratitude to him, who was nailed to the cursed tree to die to sanctify his blessed destiny, by which I and we became children of Yahweh, made holy in our innocence by the blood of the Christ, who is forever the judge of souls, struggling to pass lives of divine benevolence. That's that's my attempt at a psalm.
Yeah. So I'm gonna take it a different way since we was talking about past. Um,
Okay.
a haunting past, memories of how my lust of greed, of being much in need, haunts me, immoral, in plural circumstances, even to the point that sometimes if it didn't fit, it didn't involve finances, still there's the shame. I'll most likely never claim, never fame, never name, because the feel, shit was just too real. I was too low, kinda felt good. Really, sometimes while disgusted, visions won't go. Memory can't be erased. It's always implanted, knowing what I did before, what I did do for. Yeah, I know. Young, weak, taken in by, lured by what want and deceit, taken by one experience to open me, expose me to see, expose me to be, knowing shit I shouldn't, doing shit I wouldn't. Now, on reflection of me, I know I have an understanding. I can't make judgments because I can be judged harshly on something that ain't me, just a portion of time where my crime haunts me.
I think that about sums up everything from this session. So stay on, and I'm going to stop the recording, but stay on just for a sec, okay?
All right.